The underestimated world, the galaxy's dismissal. The Zephyrian Empire stretched across 47 star systems, their crystalline warships gleaming like deadly jewels against the cosmic void. For 3 centuries, they had been the undisputed masters of this spiral arm of the galaxy. There, Admiral Kexthar gazed at the tactical display showing a small blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. Earth. The humans called it Earth. Another primitive world, Kexthar essayed, Commander Velenok remarked with typical Zephyrian arrogance. Their transmissions show they barely have orbital stations. No fleet worth mentioning. Their largest vessels are mining ships and cargo. Holler's Kexthar S4Is studied the intelligence reports. Humans had been discovered only 50 Earth years ago when their first radio signals reached Zephyrian listening posts. Since then, they had been catalogued as a Class 5 civilization, barely spacefaring, confined to their single star system. Weak dot. The galaxy knew about Earth, of course. The Altarian Trade Confederation had made first contact in 2387, expecting to find valuable resources and cheap labor. Instead, they found a species that asked too many questions and refused to accept their place in the galactic hierarchy. The Nexari Collective had tried to establish mining rights in Earth's asteroid belt, only to be politely but firmly turned away by human diplomats who spoke of sovereignty and territorial rights. How quaint, the galaxy had thought. How naive, Earth's secret. What the galaxy didn't know was that Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Titan Base, watching the same Zephyrian fleet through sensors they couldn't detect. Her weathered face showed no emotion as she observed the alien vessels, positioning themselves just outside the solar system's edge. She had expected this day for 30 years. Admiral, the Zephyrians are holding position at the heliopause, reported Captain David Miller, her chief of operations. Same formation as their previous conquest campaigns. They're following the playbook. Sarah nodded. The Zephyrians always followed the same pattern. Arrive with overwhelming force. Broadcast demands for surrender. Give the target world exactly 1 standard day to comply. Then begin orbital bombardment of major population centers until resistance crumbled. Any word from Dr. Webb? Sarah asked. He's running final diagnostics on the gate, Miller replied. All systems show green. The fleet is ready. The fleet? Sarah almost smiled at that. If the Zephyrians knew what waited beyond the Void Gate, they might have brought more than just 100 ships. The Discovery Marcus Webb stood before the impossible sight that had consumed 20 years of his life. The Void Gate hung in the darkness beyond Pluto's orbit, invisible to conventional sensors, detectable only by the subtle gravitational anomalies it created. It looked like a tear in space itself, edges crackling with energy that made his instruments scream. Warnings about dimensional instability. Marcus had been a young quantum physicist when the Deep Space Monitoring Station at Neptune had detected the anomaly. What they thought was a black hole turned out to be something far more interesting. A naturally occurring wormhole, but not to another location in normal space. This led somewhere else entirely. The first probe they sent through never returned. The second came back fused into something unrecognizable. The third brought back data that changed everything. On the other side was a pocket dimension, a bubble of space-time containing raw materials unlike anything in the known universe. Metals that existed in quantum superposition, energy fields that responded to conscious thought, resources that made building impossible technologies suddenly possible. Gate status. Marcus asked his team. Stable and ready, replied Dr. Lisa Park, his chief engineer. The anchor points are holding. We can open it wide enough for the entire fleet if needed. Marcus looked at the tactical display showing the Zephyr positions. Soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn that humanity had been far busier than anyone suspected. The hidden fleet in the pocket dimension beyond the Void Gate. Admiral Sarah Chen's true command waited in perfect silence. 200 ships hung in the strange twilight of folded space-time, each one representing technologies the galaxy had never seen. The flagship Prometheus stretched 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull forged from quantum-locked alloys that existed partially outside normal space. It could phase in and out of reality at will, making it nearly impossible to target. Its weapons drew power directly from the dimensional barriers, capable of tearing holes in space itself. The destroyer, Cerberus, looked like a predator from humanity's darkest nightmares, its hull designed to absorb and redirect energy attacks. Its crew of 300 had trained in virtual reality combat scenarios based on every known alien species. They knew Zephyrian tactics better than most Zephyrian commanders. 50 frigates, 30 cruisers, and 100 smaller support craft completed the fleet. Each ship incorporated technologies that shouldn't have been possible. Shields that folded incoming attacks into pocket dimensions. Weapons that fired concentrated gravity waves. Engines that moved through space by convincing reality they were already somewhere else. Commander Alina Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Cerberus, watching her crew run final system checks. They had been waiting for this moment for a decade, training in the pocket dimension, perfecting technologies that existed nowhere else in the galaxy, preparing for the day when Earth would need them. All ships report ready, Admiral, came Sarah Chen's voice over the secure channel. The gate stands ready to open. Alina smiled. The Zephyrians had no idea what was coming. The ultimatum Admiral Kexthar S. broadcast reached Earth on all frequencies simultaneously. His image appeared on every screen, every communication device, every datapad across the planet. The Zephyrian was an imposing figure, 3 meters tall, with crystalline skin that refracted light into intimidating patterns. Humans of the world, called Earth. Kexthar*s voice resonated with the authority of absolute power. I am Admiral Kexthar of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. Your world now stands in the path of empire expansion. You have one of your days to surrender completely. Submit to Imperial authority, accept relocation to designated worlds, and your species will be preserved as a labor force. The transmission showed images of other worlds that had resisted, burning cities, refugee ships carrying the survivors, of entire civilizations. The message was clear: surrender or face extinction. Should you choose resistance, Kexthar continued, your cities will burn, your orbital stations will be destroyed, your species will face the same fate as the Corvani, the Deltari, and 47 other civilizations that thought they could defy the Empire. The transmission ended. Across Earth, emergency sessions convened. The United Earth government faced an impossible choice. President Maria Santos stood in the Crisis Command Center, surrounded by military advisors and scientists, all of them knowing they held humanity's greatest secret. Admiral Chen, President Santos spoke into the secure communicator. The ball is in your court. Sarah's voice came back steady and confident. Understood, Madam President. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity can really do. The response: hours and 57 minutes after Admiral Kexthar*s ultimatum, Earth responded. Not with words, but with action. The Void Gate, hidden beyond Pluto and invisible to Zephyrian sensors, began to open. Dr. Marcus Webb watched as the tear in spacetime expanded, dimensional barriers dissolving under carefully controlled conditions. Energy readings spiked across every instrument. Space itself seemed to ripple and bend as the gate widened to accommodate the fleet waiting beyond. "Gate is stable," Dr. Park reported, opening to full aperture. The first ship to emerge was the Prometheus. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on its bridge, watching as her flagship slipped from the pocket dimension into normal space. Behind her, the rest of the fleet followed in perfect formation. Admiral Kekstar's sensors detected them immediately. Where moments before his displays had shown empty space, now they revealed the impossible. 200 human vessels, there. Designs unlike anything in galactic databases, their energy signatures completely unknown. "What are those?" Commander Velanok stammered, his usual arrogance replaced by confusion and growing concern. Kekstar studied the tactical display with growing alarm. The human ships didn't match any known technology. Their hulls seemed to shimmer and phase, making it difficult for targeting systems to lock on. Energy readings suggested weapons and shields far beyond what a Class 5 civilization should possess. "Send a message to Imperial Command," Kekstar ordered. "Tell them we may have underestimated these humans." But it was too late for messages. Sarah Chen opened a communication channel to the Zephyrian flagship. Admiral Kekstar, her voice, was calm but carried the weight of absolute determination. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Fleet. You offered us a choice. We've made it. Leave our system now, or learn why humanity has survived everything the universe has thrown at us." The gate opens. The first strike. Admiral Kekstar's response was swift and predictable. The Zephyrians had built their empire on the principle that overwhelming force crushed resistance before it could spread. "All ships," he commanded, "engage the human fleet. Show them the price of defiance." The crystalline warships of the Zephyrian fleet moved with practiced precision, their formation designed to maximize firepower while maintaining defensive coverage. Energy weapons charged with the distinctive whine of Imperial plasma technology. These were weapons that had reduced mountain ranges to glass, that had cracked the moons of resistant worlds. Sarah Chen watched the enemy advance with the calm of someone who had spent 30 years preparing for this exact moment. "All ships, defensive positions. Let's see what they've got before we show them what we can do." The first Zephyrian salvo lit up the darkness between worlds. Hundreds of plasma bolts streaked toward the human fleet, each one carrying enough energy to vaporize a city block. The galaxy had seen this attack pattern destroy dozens of civilizations. What happened next had never been seen before. The human ships simply weren't there. The Prometheus and her escorts phased partially out of normal space, becoming translucent ghosts that the plasma bolts passed through harmlessly. The destroyers activated their absorption fields, drinking in the energy and storing it in their quantum batteries. The frigates deployed probability shields that convinced the universe the attacks had missed entirely. "Impossible, Commander," Velanok whispered. "Our targeting computers show direct hits, but ... But their ships are still there," Kekstar finished grimly. "What kind of technology is this?" "Human innovation, Captain." Alina Vasquez smiled as the Cerberus shrugged off a direct hit from 3 Zephyrian heavy cruisers. Her ship's absorption hull drank in the plasma, converting it to power for her own weapons systems. Parasitic warfare. At its finest, she told her crew. "They're literally charging our guns for us." This was the advantage that 20 years in the pocket dimension had given humanity. While the galaxy stagnated with technologies that worked, humans had been forced to innovate with materials that shouldn't exist and energy sources that defied physics. They had learned to think beyond conventional warfare. Dr. Marcus Webb monitored the battle from his command center near the Void Gate. His sensors showed energy patterns that would have been impossible in normal space. The human fleet wasn't just using advanced technology, they were using technologies that operated on entirely different principles than anything the galaxy knew. "How are our boys doing out there?" Webb asked his aide. "The Zephyrians are throwing everything they have at us," came the reply, "and we're just getting warmed up." The counter-stricken Moral Chen watched the tactical display as the Zephyrian formation began to falter. Their commanders were trained to fight enemies that played by the same rules they did. Shields that could be overwhelmed with enough firepower. Hulls that could be breached with sufficient force. Ships that existed in the same dimensional framework. All ships, Sarah commanded, time to return the favor. Show them what Earth ingenuity looks like. The Prometheus fired first. Its main weapon was a gravitational lance that didn't so much shoot at targets as convince space-time to crush them. The beam struck Admiral Kexthar's flagship, and for a moment the massive crystalline vessel simply compressed, its hull folding in on itself like a house of cards. The Cerberus followed up with a barrage from its reality distortion cannons. The weapons fired concentrated packets of twisted space-time that detonated inside enemy hulls, tearing them apart from within. 3 Zephyrian cruisers simply ceased to exist, their atoms scattered across light years in an instant. The frigates swarmed like angry hornets, their quantum torpedoes phasing through Zephyrian shields to detonate inside the ships themselves. Each torpedo carried a tiny piece of the pocket dimension's exotic matter, creating localized reality storms that no conventional technology could withstand. "What are you, Kexthar's transmission crackled across space, his usual confidence replaced by something humans had rarely heard from the Zephyrians: fear. Sarah's response was calm and mattered. "We're what happens when you back a curious species into a corner and give them a few decades to think about it." The revelation as the battle raged, other powers in the galaxy took notice. The Altarian Trade Confederation's monitoring stations detected energy signatures unlike anything in their databases. The Nexari Collective's deep space sensors registered gravitational anomalies that shouldn't have been possible on the fortress world of Kepler Prime. The Galactic Council's military observers watched in stunned silence as their tactical computers tried to process the impossible data streaming in from the Sol system. "The humans are winning," Admiral Dextra of the Altarian fleet whispered. "They're actually winning against a full Zephyrian battle group." "How?" demanded Counselor Zereth of the Nexari. "Our intelligence reports showed they barely had a space presence. No fleet, no orbital defenses, no weapons capable of threatening even a single Imperial cruiser." The answer was becoming clear as more human ships emerged from the Void Gate. This wasn't just a fleet Earth had been hiding. This was technology that represented a completely different approach to space warfare. While the galaxy had been content with incremental improvements to existing systems, humanity had been rewriting the rules of physics itself. The tide turns, Admiral Kexthar watched his fleet dissolve around him. Ship after ship fell to weapons he couldn't understand, attacked by vessels that seemed to exist partially in another dimension. His own flagship's shields were failing under an assault from gravity, waves that his engineers insisted were theoretically impossible. "Admiral," Commander Velenok reported, his voice tight with panic, We've lost 60% of the fleet. Our weapons are having minimal effect on their vessels. I recommend immediate withdrawal. For the first time in his military career, Kextar felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. The Empire's military doctrine was built on the principle that superior firepower always prevailed. Face an enemy with overwhelming force, and they would either surrender or be destroyed. Simple, effective, proven across dozens of campaigns. But the humans weren't following the script. They were fighting back with technologies that seemed to violate the fundamental laws of physics. Their ships phased in and out of reality, absorbed attacks and converted them to power, fired weapons that struck from dimensions his sensors couldn't even detect. "Send a message to Imperial Command," Kextar ordered. "Tell them we need reinforcements. Tell them everything we thought we knew about humanity was wrong." The chasers, the Zephyrian fleet, began its withdrawal. Admiral Chen faced a choice that would define humanity's future in the galaxy. Let them go, and word would spread that Earth had hidden capabilities. But it would also show that humanity was defensive, not aggressive. Chase them and make a statement that would echo across the stars. All ships, Sarah commanded, pursuit. Formation. Let's make sure this message reaches every corner of the galaxy. The human fleet surged forward, their exotic engines allowing them to match and exceed the Zephyrian retreat speed. The Cerberus led the charge, its hull crackling with absorbed energy that painted space around it in brilliant auroras. Captain Vasquez opened a channel to the fleeing Admiral Katche. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the UAN's Cerberus. You came to our system with threats and demands. Now you leave as refugees. Tell the galaxy that humanity remembers its enemies, and we remember our friends. Choose wisely which you want to be." The chase lasted 3 hours, human ships harrying the Zephyrian retreat all the way to the edge of the system. Not to destroy them, but to make a point. Humanity could have wiped out the entire fleet, but chose mercy instead. The message was clear: we are not your enemies unless you make us your enemies. Galactic. Shock news of the Zephyrian defeat spread through the galaxy, faster than any ship could travel. Quantum communicators carried the impossible data to every major power, every trade station, every military command center within 100 light-years on the Nexari homeworld. The Collective Council convened an emergency session. If the humans can defeat a full Zephyrian battle group, Counselor Prime Nexara stated, then everything we know about power balance in this sector has just changed. The Altarian Trade Confederation immediately dispatched diplomatic ships toward Earth. If humanity had this level of technology, trade agreements suddenly became much more important than resource extraction rights. Even the mysterious Void Runners, the ancient species that dwelled in the spaces between stars, took notice. For the first time in millennia, they sent scouts to observe this young race that fought with weapons that touched the deep structures of reality itself. New questions as the last Severian ship fled the Sol system. Dr. Marcus Webb stood before the Void Gate, watching it slowly contract back to its dormant state. The pocket dimension beyond still held secrets humanity was only beginning to understand. Technologies that defied physics, energy sources that seemed limitless, materials that existed in states of matter that had no names. "We've shown the galaxy what we can do," Webb said to Admiral Chen over the comm channel. "The question is, what do we do now?" Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed so distant. Humanity had just announced itself as a major power in galactic politics. But with that announcement came responsibilities and threats, and choices that would shape the future of the species. Now, Sarah replied, we find out if the galaxy is ready for humanity to join the conversation as an equal partner, or if we're going to have to fight for every step forward. The void gate pulsed once with residual energy, and in that pulse, those who knew how to read such things might have sensed something important. This was just the beginning. Humanity had opened a door, but they had also announced their presence to things in the galaxy that were far older and far more dangerous than the Zephyrian Empire. The war for humanity's place among the stars had begun.